The sky was clear, painted in summer blue, and sunlight danced across the quiet cul-de-sac like it knew something special was happening. Streamers flapped gently from the mailbox at 1079 Cherry Blossom Lane, where a huge balloon arch welcomed guests to Jaden's 8th birthday bash. A bounce house inflated in the driveway with a mechanical hum, and upbeat party music played softly from a Bluetooth speaker perched on the porch. Jaden darted between friends, his Spider-Man face paint smudged with frosting and laughter. His parents, Melissa and Greg, had spent weeks planning this. The permits were filed with the HOA. Invitations were printed. Even the neighbors had been informed with cheerful little flyers. There were cupcakes shaped like animals, a cooler full of Capri Suns, and the smell of smoked hot dogs floating from a small grill. It was, by all accounts, the perfect day. But across the street, behind lacy curtains and a cracked blind, she watched. Karen Halbrook, age 58, sat rigidly in her recliner, eyes narrowing like a hawk spotting prey. She didn't like loud noises, or children, or happiness that she wasn't directly controlling. Karen had lived on Cherry Blossom Lane for 12 years, and though she wasn't officially on the HOA board, she considered herself its moral backbone. Her weapon of choice, a worn blue binder full of outdated HOA regulations and passive-aggressive notes she printed on pink paper. Her name wasn't on any of the documents, but her fingerprints were all over every petty complaint in the last 5 years. She saw the balloons, the bounce house, the streamers, the fun. Her lips curled in disdain. Disgraceful, she hissed to no one. She stood slowly, ritualistically, slipping on her loafers and grabbing her phone and binder like a cop reaching for a badge and gun. She exited her house with purpose, stiff arms, clenched jaw, and made her way across the street like a villain in a Hallmark movie who'd lost the plot. Melissa spotted her first. "Oh no," she whispered. Greg followed her gaze. "Please tell me that's not." "It is." Karen didn't bother greeting anyone. She walked straight up to Melissa, cut through the music with her voice, and said, "This party is unauthorized." Melissa blinked. "Excuse me. I didn't see this listed in the monthly HOA newsletter. And this bounce house clearly exceeds the driveway space limitations." "It's been approved. We have the email," Melissa replied, trying to stay calm. Karen raised her phone, already dialing. "Noise violations, traffic, safety hazards. I'm calling the police." "You're kidding me," Greg said, stunned. Karen didn't answer. The line connected. "Yes, hello," she said into the phone, her voice suddenly tight and panicked. "There's a large, unsupervised gathering of minors. I believe alcohol might be involved. It's getting aggressive." Melissa's mouth dropped open. "What are you talking about?" Karen turned away, speaking louder, eyes darting for dramatic effect. "Yes, I'm very concerned for the safety of the children. Please send someone immediately." And just like that, the call ended, and so did the party's peace. Everyone could hear the distant sound of sirens approaching. Jaden looked up from the bounce house, confused, as the music faded to silence. The perfect day was over. Karen stood at the edge of the yard like she owned it, lips pursed, binder clutched to her chest like a holy text. Around her, the once carefree birthday scene had gone unnaturally quiet. Parents whispered to each other. Kids peeked nervously from behind balloon pillars. Melissa knelt next to Jaden, brushing his curls from his forehead. "Sweetheart, why don't you go inside and help Grandma with the juice boxes?" she said gently. Jaden nodded, confused but obedient. The bounce house deflated just slightly, as if it too sensed danger. Karen, meanwhile, was basking in the silence. She loved this moment. The pause before chaos. It gave her power. Control. She stepped further into the yard, ignoring Greg's warning glare. "You know," she said loudly, addressing no one and everyone. "Per Section 4, Subsection B of the HOA's Residential Event Guidelines, inflatable structures are strictly prohibited unless placed in the backyard." She tapped the binder like a gavel. I should cite you on this. Melissa's voice was quiet but sharp. Karen, it's not against the rules. We cleared this weeks ago. Karen chuckled without humor. The board wasn't properly notified. This will have to be addressed. Greg stepped forward. We sent 2 emails. We even spoke to Angela. She approved it herself. Karen raised an eyebrow, feigning offense. Angela isn't authorized to approve events of this magnitude. This is a block disruption. Look at the street. Cars parked along the curb. Someone could get hurt. Then she leaned in slightly and hissed, "You people think you're above the rules because you throw a little party with clowns and sugar." Melissa flinched. "You need to leave." "I'm not going anywhere. The police are on their way. I suggest you start preparing an explanation." As if on cue, a low whoop echoed from down the street. A police cruiser turned the corner, lights flashing, followed by another. The guests stared. Some pulled their children close. Greg's stomach sank. Karen smiled. The first officer stepped out of his car, hand resting near his belt, though his expression was calm. The second officer approached slower, scanning the scene like he couldn't quite believe what he was looking at. "Afternoon," the first officer said. "We received a call about a disturbance." Karen stepped forward, practically bouncing on her heels. "Yes, thank you for coming. This is completely out of control. There are children unsupervised, and I believe I smelled marijuana. Possibly alcohol. The volume is excessive and—" The officer held up a hand. "Ma'am, slow down. We're just here to assess." Melissa met the officer's eyes. "It's my son's birthday party. We have documentation showing HOA approval. There's no alcohol. This is a family event." The second officer walked toward the bounce house, where a few confused kids were still peeking from behind Spider-Man balloons. "Looks like a typical backyard birthday to me," he muttered. Karen's smile flickered. And then, from the crowd, a voice cut through the tension. "Officer," said a man holding his phone, "you might want to see something on my doorbell cam." Karen turned sharply, eyes wide. Her control, the scene she'd orchestrated, was starting to slip. The police cruisers rolled to a slow stop in front of the house, red and blue lights spinning across every window on Cherry Blossom Lane like a scene from a reality show gone wrong. The bounce house loomed silently behind the hedge, sagging a little at the corner like it was eavesdropping on the chaos. Officer Daniels stepped out of the first car, tall, calm, early 40s, the type who had seen everything from bar fights to break-ins. His younger partner, Officer Mendez, exited the second vehicle, scribbling into a notepad. Neither had their weapons drawn. No one was shouting. The atmosphere, tense. Karen stepped into the spotlight like it was opening night. "Officers," she called out with the urgency of a citizen stopping a robbery in progress. "Thank goodness you're here. I've been trying to contain the situation." Melissa opened her mouth, but Officer Daniels held up a hand, signaling for calm. Karen marched forward, binder in hand, pointing dramatically toward the yard. "There's an unauthorized party happening right there. Loud music, probable alcohol, and children running around like wild animals. It's a safety nightmare." Mendez glanced toward the scene. He saw folding chairs, a cooler full of juice boxes, parents watching their kids carefully. One toddler waddled by with a bubble wand. Nothing remotely criminal, just a middle-class Saturday with slightly too many balloons. Still, procedure was procedure. Daniels nodded politely. "Ma'am, thank you. We'll take a look. Please step to the side." Karen obeyed, but not before flashing Melissa a smug look, as if to say, "Checkmate." The officers approached Melissa and Greg. "Good afternoon," Daniels said, scanning the scene. "We got a call about a disturbance. Mind if we ask a few questions?" Melissa, still clutching the printed HOA mail, handed it over like a lifeline. "Absolutely. We got approval. This is my son's 8th birthday. No alcohol, no unsupervised kids, just cupcakes and a magician who bailed because someone scared him off." Greg added, We kept the music low, and we even texted the neighbors in advance. Daniels glanced over the paper, stamped, approved, clear as day. Mendez gave a slight smile. Looks like the only threat here is a sugar crash. Laughter rippled through a small group of neighbors now watching nearby. Karen, still hovering within earshot, didn't like that. You're just going to ignore this, she snapped, stepping forward again. There's noise, litter, possibly even illegal fireworks. I saw a sparkler last year. Daniels turned to her slowly, eyebrow raised. Ma'am, please step back. But Karen didn't back down. She waved her binder at the bounce house. This violates code. It's practically a public hazard. At that moment, a kid inside tripped over their own feet and landed in the inflatable wall with a harmless happy boing. Daniels chuckled under his breath. Mendez leaned toward his partner and whispered, "We might have a false reporter on our hands." Daniels nodded subtly. "Let's talk to the neighbors." Karen crossed her arms. Her perfect plan was slipping through her fingers. But she wasn't done yet. And neither were the police. Karen was fuming. The police weren't reacting the way she expected. No citations. No stern warnings. No, "Shut it down now." Just calm questions and smiles. She clenched her jaw as Officer Mendez strolled casually toward a group of chatting parents. One handed him a lemonade. Lemonade. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. So, she doubled down. "This is ridiculous," Karen barked, storming back toward Officer Daniels, who was now speaking with Melissa and Greg under the shade of a party tent. "Why are you listening to them? And not me? They're breaking multiple codes." "Ma'am," Daniels said, calm but firm, "we've reviewed the documents. Everything seems in order." Karen took a deep breath and dropped her voice, eyes darting dramatically. "You're missing the bigger issue. I smelled marijuana. Someone's using drugs near children. Are you just going to ignore that?" Daniels frowned. "Did you see anything directly?" "No, but I smelled it." "Where?" Karen blinked. She hadn't thought that far. "Near the fence. I saw a man acting strange." Daniels looked toward the fence. It bordered Tim and Rachel's house. Their backyard was empty, save for a garden hose and a sleepy golden retriever. That's when Tim stepped forward, holding his phone. "Officer," he said, voice steady but sharp, "I think you'll want to see this." Karen turned, visibly startled. Tim played a Ring doorbell video. It showed Karen that very morning, at 5:12 a.m., walking across his lawn, yanking a sign from his flower bed, and tossing it in the street. She didn't see the camera. She was wearing slippers. "I filed a complaint last month," Tim added. "She's been harassing my wife and I for over a year." That was our third sign. Daniels nodded. "Thank you. Do you have a case number?" Rachel appeared behind him, folder in hand. "Right here." Karen's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Another neighbor chimed in. "She yelled at my daughter for playing hopscotch on the sidewalk. And she left notes on my windshield about my too bright porch lights," added a third. "Ma'am," Officer Mendez said, now flipping through the Ring footage himself, "have you had prior disputes with your neighbors?" Karen scoffed. "That's not relevant." Daniels tapped something into his tablet. "Actually, it is." He stepped aside and quietly ran her name through the system. Melissa and Greg stood frozen, watching the drama unfold like a courtroom thriller. A few seconds later, a quiet ding from the tablet. Daniel's expression hardened. "Karen Halbrook," he read aloud, "you have an outstanding bench warrant for failure to appear in municipal court related to a civil harassment complaint." Karen's face drained of color. That's old. It was dismissed. I thought it was dismissed." Mendez shook his head. "It says active, Mom." Daniels looked her square in the eyes. "We're going to need you to stay right here while we verify." Karen's instincts kicked in. She turned. She ran. Straight into the side of the bounce house. Bowing. She stumbled backward, only to find both officers closing in. "Ma'am, don't make this worse." Karen raised a shaking hand. "You don't understand. I called you." "And now," Daniel said, reaching for the cuffs, "you're under arrest." The entire block had frozen. Parents, kids, and neighbors watched in stunned silence as Karen, who once ruled the cul-de-sac with HOA warnings and cold glares, was now stumbling backward into a Spider-Man-themed bounce house, arms flailing like a clumsy villain in a low-budget sitcom. She bounced off the side, lost her balance, and landed hard on her behind. Officer Daniels was already beside her. "Karen Holbrook," he said firmly, producing handcuffs. "You're being placed under arrest for obstruction of justice, trespassing, and failure to appear in court." Karen's face twisted with disbelief. "This is insane. I called you. They're the criminals. They have balloons." Officer Mendez approached from behind, eyes scanning the gathering crowd. "Ma'am, you filed a false report. That's a criminal offense." As Daniels began reading her Miranda rights, Karen's voice escalated to a shriek. "You're arresting the wrong person. That man over there has been parking an inch over the curb for months." Months. The crowd flinched as her voice cracked, desperate and theatrical. But it was too late. The officers gently guided her to her feet and began leading her toward the cruiser. Then came the final blow. A child, no older than 6, pointed at her and whispered loudly, "Is the mean lady going to jail?" Another kid chimed in. "Mommy said she's allergic to fun." Laughter rippled through the party. Karen's face turned scarlet. Her dignity, long held together by HOA rules and angry phone calls, was unraveling by the second. But even as she reached the police car, she turned her head one last time. "This isn't over," she spat. Greg folded his arms. "Oh, it really is." The cruiser door closed with a satisfying thunk, and Karen was driven off in the very police car she had summoned, like a twist ending to a movie she never meant to star in. As the lights faded into the distance, silence held the air for a beat. And then, applause. Actual, honest applause. Tim raised his lemonade in a mock toast to birthday parties and bounce house justice. Melissa exhaled for the first time in minutes, her hand still clenched around the now crumpled HOA approval email. That was surreal. Greg laughed, pulling her into a side hug. It was better than the magician. One of the kids ran past shouting, "She got arrested at a birthday party." "That's so cool." Officer Daniels, now standing beside the family, allowed himself a small smile. "We'll file a report. She won't be bothering you for a while." Mendez added, "Also tell your son happy birthday from us. We've seen a lot of calls, but this one's going in the Hall of Fame." The officers tipped their hats and drove off. Behind them, the neighborhood came back to life. Music returned, laughter echoed, and the bounce house puffed itself back into shape, like it, too, had survived the battle. Jaden poked his head out the front door. "Can I come back out now?" Melissa smiled. "Absolutely. The villain's gone." But little did they know, the story wasn't quite over yet. 3 days passed. The neighborhood had returned to normal, or at least the new version of normal, where every conversation ended with, "Did you see Karen get cuffed?" Videos had gone viral. Tim's doorbell footage ended up on a local news page. Then Reddit got a hold of it. And then TikTok. The clip titled, "HOA Karen Gets Bounced," literally had over 4.7 million views and counting. Cherry Blossom Lane, once the quietest street in the county, was suddenly internet famous. And Karen was not handling it well. Inside her now silent home, curtains drawn tight, she paced in front of her aging desktop computer, rereading the Community Standards Board email for the 5th time. Subject: Immediate suspension pending review. Ms. Holbrook, due to recent events and community complaints, your volunteer status and informal involvement in HOA matters are suspended indefinitely. A formal vote will determine further action. HOA board. Her hands trembled. Suspended. The audacity. She practically built this neighborhood. She was the only one who ever enforced the rules. Without her, it would collapse into chaos and crooked mailboxes. She stormed out to her front porch, ready to issue one final correction. But something stopped her cold. On her lawn, a massive inflatable bounce house. Pink, sparkly, princess-themed. And tethered to it, in bold pink lettering, "Welcome back, Queen Karen." Greg stood across the street, holding a cup of coffee, trying hard not to laugh. Melissa was adjusting a banner that read Neighborhood Watchers Brunch. No cops, no Karens, just croissants. A small crowd of neighbors cheered as kids bounced inside the castle, giggling. One was dressed as a miniature police officer. Another held a paper crown. Karen's eye twitched. This wasn't a party. It was a statement. She marched down her steps. But before she could yell, Angela, the real HOA president, intercepted her. "Karen," Angela said, professional smile in place, "this is a private event for block residents." "I am a resident," Karen snapped, "and I demand that bounce house be removed." Angela handed her a laminated paper. "Permit. Signed. Approved. Legal." Karen stared, speechless. "And one more thing," Angela added, leaning in just enough to twist the knife. "We found your binder in the street. We'll be auctioning it off at the next community garage sale." Greg raised a glass. "All proceeds go to a kids' party fund." The crowd laughed again. Karen's face burned red-hot. Without a word, she turned and stormed back into her house, slamming the door so hard it rattled the windows. The princess bounce house behind her glittered in the sun, totally unbothered. But as the party roared back to life, something strange happened. From a darkened upstairs window, a camera lens peeked through the blinds. Karen wasn't done. She was watching, plotting. The villain had taken a hit, but her final act was still coming. The neighborhood had moved on, but Karen hadn't. While Cherry Blossom Lane basked in the glow of viral fame and bounce house brunches, Karen sat behind her shuttered blinds, face lit only by her laptop screen and the soft glow of bitterness. She had a plan, and this time she wouldn't rely on the HOA. No binder, no bylaws. That route had failed her. This time, she was going rogue. The screen flickered as she clicked through tabs. City ordinances, zoning violations, permit loopholes. Then she moved on to something more personal. Background checks. If she couldn't take down the party, maybe she could take down the people. Her eyes narrowed as she zoomed in on a blurry photo of Greg's old college ID she'd found on an alumni Facebook group. "Let's see what you're hiding," she muttered. From her side desk drawer, she pulled out a manila folder labeled Melissa Carter, noise violations, suspected infractions. Inside were grainy photos of trash bins left out past pickup day and a post-it that simply read, "Suspicious Halloween decor." She hadn't been sleeping much, but she was working. A document titled Anonymous Complaint Draft sat open. It detailed everything from hazardous play equipment to potential illicit gatherings. She planned to send it directly to the City Code Enforcement Division, but she wasn't going to stop there. Karen had something else, a secret she hadn't told anyone. A drone. Purchased last fall under the guise of property surveillance, the sleek black quadcopter had been collecting dust in her garage. But now it would serve a higher purpose. At 3:00 a.m., under a moonless sky, Karen crept outside in a hoodie and slippers. She loaded the drone's battery, adjusted the camera, and launched it quietly over her neighbor's yard. From her tablet screen, she could see the entire layout of Melissa and Greg's home, where the kids' trampoline sat, where the string lights hung a little too low, where the pool gate clicked just slightly ajar. Evidence. But what she didn't see was the motion-activated light on Tim's roof. And what she didn't know was that Tim had installed his own camera system, upgraded, ultra-wide-angle, night vision equipped, and now tracking the rogue drone with a glowing red indicator that blinked. Recording. Inside Tim's house, his phone buzzed. Alert. Suspicious aerial activity detected. 3:04 a.m. He rubbed his eyes, sat up, and opened the live feed. And there she was. Karen, hooded, controlling the drone. He stared at the screen for a beat before grabbing his phone and dialing. "Hey, Greg," he whispered. "You might want to come over. Your friendly neighborhood spy is up to something. And I've got it all on video." By sunrise, the neighborhood buzzed, not with lawnmowers or barking dogs, but with rumors. Everyone had seen the blurry screenshot Tim shared in the private community group. The glowing red eye of the surveillance camera. The unmistakable silhouette of Karen crouched behind her hydrangeas, drone remote in hand. Melissa stared at the photo on her phone, her morning coffee forgotten. "She's spying on us now." Greg rubbed his temples. "She's not even subtle anymore. I think it's time we end this." Tim had already taken the footage and sent it to a contact of his, a local reporter who loved a juicy neighborhood drama. By noon, a new headline was making the rounds on social media. "Drone drama in suburbia. Ex-HOA vigilant under fire after nighttime snooping." And just beneath it, clear as day, Karen's face, captured from a frame where she accidentally looked straight into the drone camera. The comments exploded. "Is this real life?" Plot twist. Karen became the neighborhood big brother. This is better than Netflix. But the real twist came that evening. As the sun dipped low, casting a golden light over Cherry Blossom Lane, the neighbors began setting up a block-wide apology party. Not for Karen, of course, but to celebrate reclaiming their peace. Tables lined the sidewalk. Food, music, laughter. And in the center, a brand new bounce house. This time, a massive rainbow-colored castle with a huge banner strung across it. "You've seen the BONC from this, Karen." Karen watched from her upstairs window, arms crossed, a scowl etched across her face. But then she noticed something else. A city vehicle pulling into her driveway. Two officials stepped out, clipboards in hand. One wore a code enforcement badge. The other, a municipal auditor's lanyard. Karen rushed downstairs, flinging the door open. "Can I help you?" she asked, fake pleasantness stretched across her face like too tight cling wrap. "Yes, ma'am," the lead inspector replied. "We received a number of anonymous complaints from this address. We've also received footage and formal complaints about unauthorized drone surveillance and violations of the Residential Aerial Devices Ordinance." Karen's voice caught in her throat. "We'll need to inspect your equipment and check permit records. And depending on what we find, there may be legal consequences. But I was trying to protect the neighborhood," she insisted. The auditor raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, this isn't about protection. It's about privacy and harassment." As they walked inside, the camera crews showed up. Local news now covering the Karen of Cherry Blossom Lane lit from her driveway. Across the street, Melissa raised her lemonade and whispered to Greg. She wanted to be the main character. Greg smirked. She got her wish. The kids bounced behind them. Music played. Life moved on. And inside the house, once feared for its HOA notices and veiled threats, Karen Holbrook sat down at her kitchen table, alone, surrounded by forms she didn't understand, officials she couldn't sway, and a truth she couldn't deny. She wasn't the enforcer anymore. She was the lesson.